Okay, so we all know, like, reading is good for you, right?
Right.
But have you ever thought about it being, like, absolutely essential?
Essential.
Yeah, like, not just for, personal growth and all that, but for, like, the future of society.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
That's what we are diving into today.
Yeah.
This text. It's arguing that reading, especially now in the 21st century, is not just a hobby, but like a necessity.
A necessity. That's a bold statement.
Right. So we're going to unpack that, explore why this author believes reading is so crucial in a world that seems to value, well, everything but.
And I think a good place to start is with this idea of free will, because it's central to the author's argument.
Yeah, and it's something, at least for me, I kind of take for granted.
And that's the thing about free will, right? We assume we have it, that our choices are our own. But the text challenges this in a really interesting way.
Yeah, it does. Like that example.
With
Right. Oh, sorry.
No, you go. You were going to say.
I was just thinking about that example in the text, the one with the guy from the working class neighborhood. It really stuck with me.
Right, yeah, the one who loved football and coffee.
Yeah.
And the text was basically like, are those preferences really his?
Yeah. Like, did he choose them or were they shaped by his environment, his upbringing?
Exactly. It makes you question how much of what we think we choose is actually influenced by factors outside our control.
And that's where reading comes in, right?
Exactly. The text argues that reading, especially diverse perspective, can help us break free from those limitations.
It's like it expands your worldview,
Mm-hmm.
lets you see things from angles you wouldn't have considered before.
It's like upgrading your mental software.
Right.
Totally.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Right.
We've all heard that one. But
Mhm.
this text takes it a step further, suggesting reading can help us predict the future.
It's not about fortune telling, of course.
Well, unless it's like a really good fantasy novel.
Okay, true.
Yeah.
But even then, it's more about understanding how the world works.
So how does that work? How can reading help us with the future?
Think about it this way. Reading helps us understand cause and effect, recognize patterns, anticipate consequences. And those are all essential skills for making decisions about the future.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It's like the text mentioned, people who read a lot of history tend to have a better understanding of current events.
Because they can see the patterns repeating.
Exactly. They've developed this mental framework for understanding how complex systems interact, which lets them make more, well, informed predictions about what might happen next.
That's really interesting. Okay, so how does this all tie into the text's emphasis on conscious reading and that whole beginning with philosophy idea?
Yeah, the author definitely emphasizes the importance of approaching reading with intention. Like, it's not just about passively absorbing information.
It's about engaging with the material, right?
Exactly. It's about asking questions, challenging assumptions, even if it makes you a little uncomfortable.
Which, to be honest, when I first saw that start with philosophy bit, I was definitely intimidated.
Right. Like, where do you even begin? But the way the text breaks it down, it's actually not that scary. It's about engaging with challenging ideas, like thinking critically about different philosophical perspectives, even if you don't agree with them.
So it's about strengthening your ability to think for yourself, not just accepting what you read at face value.
And that ties into another crucial point. The text makes the danger of knowing enough.
Oh, yeah, that whole illusion of knowledge thing.
Right, with the internet, we have access to so much information, it's easy to feel like we know everything.
But the reality is we often just skim the surface, right?
Exactly. And that can make us vulnerable to manipulation, to misinformation. We might think we're informed, but we haven't done the deeper reading needed to really understand complex issues.
Which is something the author seems to link to the way modern life is structured. Like we're all so busy, so overwhelmed with information.
That we end up valuing speed over depth, sound bites over substance.
And that's a problem, right? Because if we lose that ability to think critically, to engage deeply with information,
then we become easy to manipulate. We lose our ability to make informed decisions, both for ourselves and for society as a whole.
which brings us back to the beginning. Reading, truly reading, it's not just a leisure activity. It's about equipping ourselves with the knowledge and the critical thinking skills to navigate this increasingly complex world.
And that brings us to, I think, a really important question for our listeners to consider. If reading is so essential for a better future, how do we make time for it?
In a world that seems to demand more and more of our attention, our time,
Exactly. That's something for all of us to think about.